Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
And welcome to another episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today I am joined by local Orlando resident and person I've actually met in real life, which is always a shock and a surprise, but always a good thing. I am joined by Rachael Swertfeger of the DnD Raw and Epic Endings podcast, and she is just freshly back from New Zealand. So welcome to the podcast, Rachael.
Hey, David. Thank you for having me.
It is absolutely my pleasure. And I do have to say right off the bat, before we get started, thank you so much for everything you did for Women in Tabletop Gaming Month with getting just blog interviews from so many people. It was just so helpful. And I have to just say thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, a lot of the ladies were super excited to do it. And they're glad to be seeing some, having some recognition and getting, having their voice heard kind of thing. Because I have definitely spoken to many and they're like, yeah, I'm kind of here, but it's like we don't exist sometimes. So it was really, really awesome that you helped pull that together and, gave us women who don't have the voice or are a little bit more introverted and shy, gave us that opportunity or gave them that opportunity. I have a voice. I'm loud. I know. But, it gave them a chance to reach out without being, feeling like they're pestering people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was awesome.
Well, I'm super happy to have had you be a part of it. And even like during that lead up to it, one of the things was I really want to have Rachael come on the podcast. And finally, after a number of months and scheduling and rescheduling and issues, you are here and I'm happy to have you. And we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to geek out a bit. It's going to be great.
That's right. Now, and I do have to say, it's very rare that I actually have met people that I have on the podcast. I think there's maybe a handful. I've done, by the time your episode comes out, I think I'll have 130 or 140 episodes. And I can say probably 10 people I've met. So you are one of the few that actually has seen me and talked to me and my awkward self.
You aren't that awkward, at least no more than the rest of us at the meetups.
Oh gosh, I keep planning to go to them and then either like something comes up because Saturdays are generally like the family day. And it's like, okay, I really want to go. But at the same time, my wife and kids want to do things. And therefore I am like, that is my thing. And I gotta, that's
Yep.
what I.
Yep, that's fair. I mean, obviously family and life comes before, hobby. I guess we would call it a hobby in our case. I know for some people it's a little bit more of a job. It's a little bit more a passion, but family life comes before that. So we understand. We get a lot of people who are, I would really love to go, but I can't because Saturday is, I do things with my wife or I do things with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's cool. We get it. We understand. We're lucky that our spouses are interested in the same thing, so that's what we do.
Yep, that is something where I'm at least hoping before the year's end I make it to either a November or December one if they're happening, but I'll cross my fingers.
Yeah, I mean with the holidays I know it's going to get tough for us as well, so we will see.
As people that listen to the show know, I send out an email and I get information, and there's a number of different things that you are into that we're going to talk about. And the first one is a show that, as again, regular listeners to this podcast know, I've not watched it at all. And it's probably the one fandom where people have been like, yeah, you really need to watch that. You really need to watch it. And I just haven't. And it's Doctor Who, and it's come back with a new doctor, and people are super excited. So how did you get into Doctor Who originally?
Originally. Okay, so I have always been a big fan of the library system. Back home, when I was growing up, over the summer I would go wander around the library, take part in their kids programs and stuff, even though I was technically, when I was engaged in some of them, I was too old at the time. They're like, these programs are actually for like 7 to 12-year-olds, and you're 14. Can you please stop coming to our programs? Even though I was more almost like volunteer helping at the program by that point, but I would still go, I would hang out. Almost every time I visited the library, I would pick up either a random DVD box or a random book that I saw that looked interesting or whatever. So on one of these occasions, I picked up, it was actually the 2005. This was later, I was still kind of lurking at the library, but I had picked up the reboot with Christopher Eccleston. It was a box set, but it didn't have all the shows. It only had, I think, the first half of that season or something weird. And I was like, this looks interesting. Okay. So I took it home. I plopped it in and was like, wow, I like this. I don't know what it is. Started looking into it more, found out that it was like a long running series. I haven't watched, to be honest, I've only watched maybe a couple of the older ones. But I kind of picked up with Eccleston and kept going. So I was like, yay, this is cool. And then I even had a Doctor Who themed wedding. And
What?
yeah, it wasn't like over the top crazy. But I did do, like, our invites actually had the TARDIS on the back, like flying through that, nebula look. And then it had sort of Gallifreyan looking patterns in the background and stuff. And it had some nerdy things that were like nods to Doctor Who, but not overtly, this is definitely Doctor Who unless you know it. And then we had on our tables, we had bow ties and little cowboy hats, 3D glasses, stuff like that for like props for people to take pictures. We had a TARDIS as our cake topper, so it was just like little nods at it, but not quite full on. We had pitched the idea of doing our bridesmaids and groomsmen dressed as variations of the Doctor and their companions, but we didn't go that route. We went simple and straightforward because many of our guests would not have understood any of it.
Right.
So, and if you haven't watched it, that's totally fine. I think people should watch it, at least a few episodes, give it a try. I know it's not for them. There are many fandoms out there that are not for me. And, you pick what you like. So,
well, what was the draw for you for Doctor Who? Like what hooked you into it?
so I actually, since I started with Eccleston, and I really liked his character. He simultaneously was like endearing and kind of a jerk and very not mysterious, but had that like air of like, I don't actually know what's going on. So I was kind of drawn in by the mystery of like, because there's 50 years of history in the past, and I didn't know that at the time. So he was referencing things and I just didn't understand them, but I thought it was cool. So I was like, oh, well, maybe this is, like leading into the rest of the series, because I thought it was a new series.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow, like they gave this character like so much history for episode 1. That's cool, and then found out it was like a whole show. I'm like, oh, well, that makes way more sense. But still.
I remember it's probably mid 80s. I remember very clearly a Doctor Who episode on TV because I found it just really ridiculous because of the way that I think is the Daleks. Yep. Or I'm like, are you joking? Like, this isn't serious. And I think at the time I had already watched probably some of like Star Wars on videotape, and it's like, this isn't realistic. Or at least it's not like cool. It's really, I don't understand why these people are running away from these creatures that aren't doing anything. And that's the only memory I have of Doctor Who before the reboot and people getting into it. And it's just, I've had a number of guests on, and they tell me, hey, you should really watch it. You should probably start at the initial reboot, which is what you're talking about, and just go from there. and it's just I don't know why I haven't, but at the same time, there's a number of shows where I'm like, I won't really want to watch that, except I'll just rerun or rewatch like other shows, and it's
Yep.
like, what am I doing?
I totally understand that. Yeah, and it's hard to get into a new show, especially if you know like there's so many people that like it, because you're like, I don't want to watch it and not like it and be the the uncool kid or whatever. But I mean, at least watching a couple shows or a couple episodes, like there are a few from the first season. So Eccleston's season was also a little bit, it didn't have as much of like an arc to it as like some of the later seasons where, it spans like 3 or 4 seasons, like the whole story arc, and it all ties together and, culminates at the end of, 3 seasons of this buildup. It was very almost like one-shotty, and it was kind of nice because it wound up having a lot of really good single episodes, I think, that some of the later seasons didn't have, where it wasn't a monster of the week episode, it was a monster of the season episode, like a long build up to this creature that was ultimately pulling the strings of all the other puppet creatures.
Okay.
Which is in its own right also really cool, but at the same time I really liked the Eccleston season. I think is one of my favorites, just because of the way I think that season has the most episodes individually that I like from it than all the others.
Fair enough. Do you have a favorite doctor?
I mean, I can't say I have a favorite because I think Eccleston and Tennant are super close, and I mean, if they're not tied, they're neck and neck. Depending on which companion you're probably pairing with Tennant at that point. Just because I really love the way Eccleston and Rose work together, or Billy Piper. So I loved their chemistry, and then I liked Tennant and Rose's or Billy Piper's chemistry as well. So I think the companions also play a part. I did not, and I know this is a somewhat unpopular opinion, I did not like Matt Smith. I also, not that I didn't like him as an actor, I just didn't like his variation of the Doctor. I also did not like the writing for Capaldi. I think he would have been an amazing Doctor, but I didn't think the writing was as good. So it was like one of those, he had some awesome potential, and I think it could have gone really well. I just think the writing kind of flopped for him, unfortunately. So yes and no.
Gotcha. I understand that, especially with the writing, where you have these incredibly wonderful characters, and you know that the actors behind them are great, and it's like, can you, where's the good stuff for them, essentially? And it happens across everything, where you just look at them and you're like, you could be so much better if you had great writing.
Yep. Yeah, or if like there were some things they changed for Capaldi's character that I hated. They tried to make him this kind of cool grandpa kind of character almost, and I'm like, but at the same time he also has moments where he was an outright jerk. And I just was like, no, this is not my Doctor. Like, what is going on? So it was odd because like I said, I think Capaldi would have been amazing, but I think the writing took away a lot of that potential.
Do you have any favorite seasons or episodes that stand out? I know it's always there's always one episode that everyone tells me to go watch. And I think it's like, is it the Angel episode?
Probably. I was gonna say it's probably Don't Blink.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I really like that one, obviously. It's a really good one. It's one of those ones where it's simultaneously really, really awesome and kind of terrifying. I think it's why I like that. I also really, really like I think it's called Are You My Mummy? It might just be called Mummy, but it's I think Eccleston's like second or third episode. It's very early on in the season, and it has the children with the gas masks. It's another one where it's kind of creepy, really like dark, almost in that dark field. But the ending of it is amazing. And it's one of those ones that I think that's probably one of the ones that hooked me into the series the most. Because I remember watching it and just going, this is kind of scary. And then by the end of it, I was like, that was awesome. Like the way he figured it out, and then just kind of the way it all played out and everything, just it was awesome. So I loved it.
There's those episodes that just when they get you, and the standout episodes like that is just like, it makes me want to watch the show just to get to those kind of episodes and be like with everybody else in the Doctor Who world of, wow, those were great episodes.
Yeah, definitely. You might want to give the I can't remember if it's Are You My Mummy or just Mummy. Is the title of it, but it's one of the first couple, I think, episodes of that season, of Eccleston's season. So it's like I said, I think that might have also been one of the ones that it's, wow, there's a lot of history, but there's also this mystery, and it's kind of creepy, and it's also kind of funny, you know, because he has his moments where he does goofy things, and you're just like, you know, he's charming and endearing and weird.
Now, have you, because as I referenced when we started, you have been in New Zealand for a trip. Have you been able to watch the latest Doctor Who?
Yes, we actually got back just before the new season aired, so we have seen both the new episodes. I will say the verdict on her is still, I mean, I love her as the Doctor already. She's got this quirk going on that I'm like, okay, I'm digging it, you know. I think so far I haven't like gotten into the new series yet, because the you know, I'm sure you know that the Doctor like regenerates, and there's always this weird, right after they regenerate, the first few episodes are always a little clunky, I think, just because it's like the Doctor's kind of trying to remember who they were, but also adapt to who they are now. So it's this weird kind of trying to find themselves again for usually a few episodes. So she's still in that phase. And I think it usually takes 2 to 3, 4 sometimes episodes to get past that, to really see like, okay, am I sold fully on her, or am I, you know, lukewarm on her, or do I hate her?
How is the new Doctor? Like, because I've heard good things, and I heard that she has like good companions too so far. Yes, no, like,
I'm not a fan of the 3 companions yet. I don't care for the 2 gentlemen, Ryan and Graham, I think are their names. I think Ryan's just kind of an idiot. And then Graham is like, you know, this grumpy guy is like, I don't want to be here. And I think it's Yasmin is the female. So she's got, you know, the new Doctor has 3 companions. I don't know. I'm like indifferent to her. She hasn't had that much interaction, I guess, overall compared to the other 2. It's like they're kind of playing up the 2 male companions, but she's kind of along for the ride, but nothing's really story-wise brought the 3 of them in, or brought the 3 of them fully together to, like, you know, make a cohesive, like, what is going on. So hopefully in the next couple episodes it'll start tying everything in like it usually does.
Okay. If I was going to jump into the Doctor Who fandom, start with the new one, or just go back to the Eccleston one and start from there?
Honestly, I would start with the Eccleston so the upside and the downside, however, to doing that. The upside is it might get you hooked. The downside is that there's a huge backlog, and Eccleston only had 1 season. So if you get attached to Eccleston, don't stay attached, because he goes away after 1 season, which I was really upset about, because again, I didn't know that this was a long running thing. I didn't know about the whole regeneration aspect. You know, I didn't know any of that. So at the end of the season, when he was getting ready to regenerate, I was super confused. I watched it, no idea what was happening, and then learned later that there was, it was going to be coming back and there would be like a new doctor and blah. And I was like, I feel like I've missed something. Like, what bus did I get on? So yeah, don't get attached, but don't get too attached.
Gotcha. I will keep that in mind. I swear I always say I have so many TV shows that I need to watch, and then I just rewatch things like lately it was I'm rewatching Parks and Rec now.
Oh, nice.
And a couple months ago is The Office. I was like, I'll just rewatch The Office for whatever reason, and that's what I did.
We're actually just finishing up watching Parks and Rec for the first time.
It's so good.
I know. We're I think halfway through season 6.
Okay.
5. We're either at the end of season 5 or we've started and gotten through like half of season 6. I can't remember. There's binge nights where we sit and watch like 4 episodes at a quip, and we're just like, now where are we at in the season or in the series?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because I work from home, it's like, okay, 3 episodes fits into an hour. I'm home for about 5 hours. How many episodes can I realistically watch in a day?
Yep.
Oh my goodness. So beyond Doctor Who, I guess we need to talk about one of your other shows that you like to watch,
which you've mentioned already.
Shock upon shock. I was trying to transition and I failed. So
I was wondering if that's what was going on.
Sometimes it lands and sometimes it just goes in a different direction.
It happens.
It does, but it is The Office.
Rec, so
yeah, but it is The Office. You are a fan of The Office.
I am. I have the first 6 seasons on DVD that I have watched repeatedly. After that, I liked it, but I didn't care enough to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So I only have the first 6 seasons on DVD because I think around season 7's when it started not going downhill, but I wasn't as invested in the characters, and I don't know if it's just time in my life that I was doing a lot of other stuff, or what the deal was, but lost interest.
Well, I can certainly say after doing my rewatch is that after Michael leaves, there's just so much. I mean, the A storylines regarding like who the manager is and the management style and everything, like I don't really care for it. And then the B storylines, like I enjoy good background characters. I enjoy the side characters and what they're getting into. And even some of that was just not my thing. And is like I watched it because I needed to make sure that I got to the end, and the ending is wonderful. But some of those episodes are more a struggle to get through.
Yeah, yes. Even in a few of the earlier seasons, there's maybe those 1 or 2 episodes where it's not hard to get through. It's hard to get through because it's so cringe. You're just cringing the whole time. You're like,
oh my gosh, yes. I saw an article recently. I saw an article recently about how problematic The Office is now looking back on it. And absolutely, there are so many episodes where they're trying to make it funny, and it was funny, and honestly, like some of them are still funny, but at the same time, we're living in the 2018 time period of that's not really acceptable, and
exactly,
you're giving it a lot of like, it's not good.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I want to laugh, but I also kind of want to cry. Like that this was a thing, and I laughed at this really hard. Yeah. It was still kind of funny.
Now, when you got into The Office, were you watching it as it was airing, or did you catch it later? Was it like a Netflix find for you?
So I'm gonna have to look up when this officially came out. I believe I watched some of it live because it's honestly, I don't even remember what year this came out. Let me see. What year did it came out? 2005. Okay, so yeah, I was in like my senior year of high school. So I think I caught some of it live. The problem with live television is I normally didn't catch most things live because I was, especially my last year of high school, I was working and I was doing dual enrollment at my school, which consisted of 5 college courses.
Ooh.
So I was fully enrolled in 5 college courses, no actual classes at the high school. I only went to, I had 3 night classes and 2 online classes. So I'd get up at, 6 in the morning. I'd go to work, get to work by 7:30, work until 3, 4 in the afternoon, drive over to college and do my classes that were face to face, spend time in the computer lab doing my online stuff, and then go home. So I was a little busy. If I managed to catch TV, it was on my days off, but so 90s kids will probably understand this. 90s, 80s, 2000s kids. I had a VCR in my room and I had a blank tape in it, and I would program it to DVR, essentially, the shows I wanted to watch. So I would watch them when I had the free time by recording them on a VHS and just watching them back the next day or, whenever it was. I did this for years for so many shows.
I want to say I totally understand. And there was a point where I can't remember what shows it was when back in like the late 90s or early 2000s, where I had to have 2 VCRs set up to tape both of the shows I wanted to watch, because either I wasn't home, like I was working or going to college or whatever it was. And it's like, yeah, that's how it was for us way back in the day, was having to have multiple VCRs.
Yep.
Or then the thing that I always had to do was start it 5 minutes ahead of time and make sure that the program ended like 5 or 10 minutes after, in case like they had an extra long episode by a few minutes, so you didn't miss that ending.
Yep. And then you just fast forward through the commercials. And yeah. Yep. I did the exact same thing. So there was an obscure show on Sci-Fi. This ran, I don't even know what years it ran. I think it was in middle and early high school. So it'd be not Road. It was called Roar.
Okay, I think I remember hearing about the show. I don't remember watching
There's
it.
so few people that actually know about the show. It's ridiculous. And there's multiple different shows called this. This one specifically had Heath Ledger. So let me see. This was 1997. It ran for, I think, 1 season. They didn't even air all the episodes. It got canceled, I think, before it was done. So I think they only aired like 6 or 7 of the episodes. But it was one of those, I think it started over the summer. So like the last week of summer is when they started airing it. So I got to stay up late and watch it. But then the next episode, the next week, would have been, quote unquote, after my bedtime. So I actually recorded it. So I recorded these couple episodes, and it was a weird show. I actually have it on DVD now, but the DVD is one of those questionable quality maker DVDs because the episode names don't line up with the numbers. I'm like, what is happening on my DVD? It says I should be watching, episode 6 titled this, and it just showed this other title, which is like 3 episodes later. It's a special thing. But I think that was one of the first shows that I really recorded every week. That was one of the ones, like, first series shows that I was like, oh, I have to watch it because it's really good. And it was also, I was, like 13, so it was Heath Ledger. I had a crush on Heath Ledger because I was a small young girl. So, and he was, running around in, was it Celtic Ireland or whatever? Celtic Scotland, Celtic Ireland, one of those, in, studded leather armor with a giant sword. Gotta be like, okay, cut her a break, she's 12 and it's a cute guy in leather. But yeah, from there, that's kind of where I got the idea, and then I did The Office and several other shows on VHS, and now I have them on DVD.
And we have the wonderful option of Netflix until they disappear from Netflix, as shows tend to do.
Yep, sad day.
It is going to be a sad day when Netflix has no Office and no Parks and Rec, because then I'll be like, what can I watch? I'll have to watch shows.
If I may recommend some shows that are awful in their own good way, have you watched Big Mouth?
I have not.
Oh, it's a time. It's if you offend easily, don't watch it. If you don't offend easily, it is it's about kids going through puberty. But it's from their point of view. Normally that kind of animation I have a hard time getting into because it's kind of what I call ugly animation. I don't like that style. But it's just so freaking funny. In two ways, it's funny because they're legit having, like the awkward moments of, teenage years, but it's also hilarious because you're like, oh, I remember those days, unfortunately. Oh, that checks out. That's pretty spot on how it was. Yep. But then you're cracking up as well. So season 2 for that just came out, and Chris and I have been making our way through it, and it's there are moments where you cringe so hard, like, your inner 90s 80s child cringes, like, oh yes, we may have done things like that. Ouch. And then there's other moments where it's just gut busting laughing. So I would recommend that if you need something to watch. Don't watch it with the kids.
Oh no. They have access to my Netflix account because they have their own like sub accounts.
Yeah.
And they saw that I was watching a animated show called BoJack Horseman.
Oh.
And so they were like, "Can we watch that?" I was like, "No, you cannot.
No, you cannot."
just because it's cartoon does not mean you get to watch it.
Yeah. Not all animes are for kids.
That's right. Now, going back to The Office, do you have a particular favorite character? Because it's always fun to find out who people love in The Office.
Ooh, favorite character. I really like Dwight. He's just that everything that you like. He's one of those characters that I would love to have somebody like that in my life that takes himself so seriously about everything that they're oblivious to the fact that they are that serious about everything. I love his character. I love the pranks they pull on him and just his reactions to everything. And Rainn Wilson did an amazing job of playing him, just his super, forced seriousness. And then I love the pranks Jim plays on him the best, of course. But yeah, I think Dwight's probably my favorite character.
Yeah, he, when you initially watch it and you're like, oh, Jim and Pam, oh, Michael's funny. But then when you get to do like rewatches of the series, you definitely pick up on a lot of like the more character moments. I love Dwight. I tell my wife all the time, it's like, man, I wish I was more like Dwight Schrute. And she's like, yeah, that's a divorceable offense right there.
Yeah, I think it is. But I want a Dwight Schrute in my life.
Oh my gosh, it would be so amazing. Dwight, like between like all the things that Dwight can actually do with the things that he thinks he can do. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like, buddy, you're at a 13. We're going to need you at like a 6. Tone it down a bit.
And with Dwight being one of those big characters, did you have like a favorite of the smaller supporting cast?
I'm trying to think, because I know I kind of liked them all sort of equally, I guess. They all had their moments. Like Stanley had his moments and Kevin has his, and then you always get Meredith with like the awkward, always the awkward, and then the Creed with his weird moments, even though he goes away pretty early on in the series. Which actually he was, I guess, in real life. A lot of things that he references in the show are actually callbacks to his real life.
Yep.
And things that he's like done or whatever. So I always found that interesting. Just that they pulled all that in, and then oh gosh, I can't remember. I know his real name is BJ Novak, and he's like the writer on the show.
Ryan. Yeah.
But Ryan, yeah. You know, like his character starts out kind of awkward and cool. So I don't know. I think they all have their moments. I don't think any one of them really, I would say, really stands out for me.
I gotta ask this question: is Toby the worst?
I don't think he's the worst. I really don't. If I had to say who was the worst, I'd go with Angela. She sucks the fun out of the room and out of just everything.
Oh my goodness. It's all like, I think one of the things that is when you're rewatching it is you're just like, man, Michael is just so mean to Toby the entire series.
Yeah, he's so mean.
Because he's HR.
Yeah,
he's not one of us.
And he got divorced from his wife, and he just like rubs it. It's like, here, I see this gaping wound. Let me just dump salt and then tequila and then just mush it in with my hand. Yeah, let me grind it in. And Michael, you're mean.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you also know that like deep in the back of your head, you're like, if that was today's world, Toby being HR and Michael saying those things to him, that'd be a one-time deal, and then Michael would be walking out that door.
Yep. Oh my gosh, so good. Do you have any favorite like moments of The Office that are like, when you think about The Office, you're like, this right here, The Office?
I really like the Office Olympics that they do pretty early on, where they have when Michael's signing for his condo, and and so he's out for the day with Dwight, and Dwight's like helping him, oh, there's like mold right here, and well, like just being Dwight. And then at the back of the office, they have the Office Olympics. I love that. Just because it shows like the cute side of everybody and how they can really like pull together. But probably one of the ones I really, really like is when they're telling Dwight that it's pretty early on, and it might just stick out in my memory because I just rewatched, I think, the first season not too long ago, as there's the rumors of layoffs are going around. And Jim tells Dwight that he wants to make an alliance, and they convince Dwight to be in the box in the warehouse or whatever. Like, that just cracks me up every time, just watching him.
Oh gosh, yes, because at that time when they were doing that, Survivor was just starting, and it's like, yeah, you want to form an alliance. It's like, I know exactly the reference, and I know where this is going.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty hilarious where he's down in the box, and Bam's like on the phone fake calling, and just you see the box in the background like tip over. I'm like, yep, that's exactly how I would imagine that going, actually.
I think one of my favorite things to watch is that relationship between Jim and Dwight throughout the entire series, just to see how it started and evolved and changed, and just how that they work so well together. But just inside the office, it's that prank mentality.
Yeah. It's like that awkward, we hate each other, but we also kind of like each other and get along, and we got each other's back. But given the chance, we'd slit each other's throat in a heartbeat. That's kind of the vibe they give off the whole time, which I love, because it's that fine line of, are you actually friends or do you legit hate each other?
Yeah. Now, before we transition off, I've heard there's been talk about doing like an Office remake. what would your thoughts be? Too soon? Don't do it?
I think there's a lot of factors that would play into it. You know, are you rehashing the show and like a rebooty way, or are you continuing the series, so to speak? You know, who are going to be the characters? Because I don't think they will. They can make a similar series, I think, or similar season, whatever you want to call it, that might have similar chemistry as the first, you know, the originals, but I don't think it'll ever be the same.
Right, exactly. That's the one thing is with all the reboots that are happening, it's yes, go ahead and reboot, but number one, do you need to even call it like The Office? Like, could you call it something else? Like what the one that springs to my mind is Charmed right now. Like them calling it Charmed. Like, why couldn't you call it something else? It's not really. Yes, it's three sisters and they're witches, but could you have called the show something else? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if it's not the exact same characters and the exact same premise, it's not the exact same show.
Right.
It shouldn't have the exact same title.
We touched on TV, but we're going to dive into the thing that brought us together, and that is tabletop gaming.
Woo-hoo.
So, as I always start off with, how did you get into tabletop games? Because everyone has their own unique story on this one.
Yeah. So this was my senior year in high school. It might have been my first semester in college even. But it was like right around that same time. So I was like, you know, just 18 barely. And I was dating a guy named Scott, and he had a couple friends that were into it and playing it, and they were looking for a couple players. And Scott's like, you know, you're kind of a nerd. Why don't you come hang out and give it a try? Like, I don't know what we're doing, but it's they call it Dungeons and Dragons. Come play. And I was like, okay. So funny enough, I distinctly remember sitting at the table, and across from me was this guy who was just a couple years younger than me named David. Next to him was Emerson, and then the guy running the game was Tony, I think his name was. He obviously didn't stay in the picture very long, but I think his name was Tony. So he was running the game, and the rest of us were playing. And I remember I made a bard because I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, bard, that sounds fun, whatever. And it was 3.5, D&D 3.5. And so I had my bard, and I got really into it. Like, I burned a mix CD that had Ocarina of Time songs on it because my character played an ocarina. So I had a CD so that whenever I played a song, I hit the little play button and I played music because I have no musical talents whatsoever. So I played this bard, and I remember David. I hated him at the time. We are now pretty good friends. But at the time I hated him. He was obnoxious. He was playing a wizard or a mage with a frog. I don't remember what Emerson was playing, but probably like a monk. And then I think Scott was playing a fighter. And that game lasted 2 sessions before I think it dispersed for various reasons. And it was a couple months before David was like, hey, I want to run a game. And I was like, I don't know. And I told Scott, I'm like, I don't know if I like David. I find him really obnoxious. He's like, give him another try. You know, like, you only got to hang out with him like twice, and he was playing a really stupid character. He's going to run a game now. So like, okay. So it wound up being the couple of us playing, and David was running, and that was a lot of fun. And from there, we just kept our same characters. And from there, I was like, awesome, this is a lot of fun. I transitioned, moved up to Orlando for college. And, you know, David and I became like best friends and we played some more 3.5. We tried Legend of Five Rings. What's the other one called? Dragon Age. We did a Star Wars Saga game. D&D 4th edition by that time had come out. Yeah, and then a gajillion board games. So it kind of just went from, ooh, who's this stupid little annoying kid to, all right, he's actually really cool. And he wound up being one of our groomsmen at our wedding. So, yeah.
What was the draw for you for tabletop gaming?
I think so. The earliest thing I remember, because I was still I've never been introverted, but I was very cautious and reserved. Like, I don't understand exactly what the point of this game is. Because at the time and before that, I had been really, really, really into Halo. I was all about, you have an end goal, you start out, you make it to that goal, yay, you win the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't figure out this game, and I'm like, I don't understand what the purpose is. And it wasn't until, and I really distinctly remember this, we were playing against Scions, or the psionic class of some sort that had, and I only remember it because David, they had these blades that they could mentally form from their hand, like these glowing blades, similar to like the sword and almost in Halo. And I remember David explaining it to us, but he explained it to us by having us all sit on the couch in Scott's living room and jumping around like a crazy person. He's like, so you see this person, they come down and their blade extends from their hand and you don't know what it is because it's light and blah, blah, blah. And he's like flailing around and doing like ninja kicks. And, I didn't understand, but I'm like, if this is what the game is about, I'm on board. Sign me up. Like, if I get to jump around like a crazy person and it's cool, yes. So, yeah, since I was like, okay, this is what the game is about. You get to be a weird person and nobody's gonna think you're weird because everybody's doing it.
That I don't think I ever had. I mean, I had one person who was a storyteller for our vampire and werewolf and mage games that we did, and he would kind of like, because he would always pace, like that was his thing when he ran the games, was he would pace, we'd chill out on the sofa or whatever. But yeah, he'd always like be pacing, but then he'd do like hand actions to kind of mimic stuff. But we never had anyone like go full on like jumping around like that.
Oh, it was full on, like disappeared in the hallway and then like sprung out, you like ninja kicking in the air. It's like, and then you see, yeah, he was really into it. And I was like, this is fun. Okay. Yeah. So,
What are some of your favorite tabletop games?
I actually am a huge fan right now of the D&D 5th edition. I think is a really great system. It's just complex enough to teach a lot of the like, it has enough complexity that you can do a lot with it, but it also is streamlined enough that you can easily pick it up and run it, or pick it up and, in my case, teach it. So it's really awesome because I get to teach kids how to play it, and it's not so complex that it takes me 6 days to explain something. It's, here's your one sheet and these are your skills. If they're trying to do something that sounds like this, you're going to apply this skill. It's straightforward enough. So that's really, really awesome. We actually went to Gen Con last year, or this year, sorry, our first time. And I got to play so many games. It was amazing. I really, really liked the 7th Sea system. So I'd like to get more into that. I really enjoyed Numenera. So I want to get my grubby little hands on more of that, even though I have, I think 12 books on my shelf for it at the moment. I want more. And by wanting more, I mean, I want to play more. So that one was really fun. I've run with the kids and stuff. I've run D&D 5th edition. I tried Mouse Guard. I played, it's called Masks: A New Generation. So they're superheroes. So I've done that one. We've tried playing Michdom.
Oh, yep. Okay.
It was a little bit convoluted and confusing. I think it once you get to a higher level, it smooths out a bit. But because we played at a very low level, it was a little bit hard to understand what exactly we were doing. So that one was cool, but confusing. Yeah, so I don't have like a favorite system. I just have a lot of systems I really like. I did play. What was the other one we played? We played D20 Modern, and I thought that was like so. We played. Geez, what else did we play? Oh, that stupid. It's like BattleTech, but it's not BattleTech. It was shoot. It was a big tabletop game where you play as giant mechs, and there was just way too much math and angles and calculating.
Oh, okay. What did you have like figures for your mechs too, and you had to?
Yeah.
Or was it more of like a like, was it a role playing game, or more like you have rules but you have your mechs that you move around, and then you gotta use like laser pointers and distance?
That one.
Yeah,
like the mechs with the laser pointers and the distance.
I think it's like, is it BattleTech?
It's like BattleTech,
Or Mech Warrior or something. Gotcha. I remember playing that in college, and not I didn't really like it because, I want to role play. I don't want to mech drive and figure out like if I'm in distance for weapons, and then because I didn't do a correct loadout, I liked how I loaded my thing out that I'm going to die in the first 30 seconds or whatever.
Yep, that was exactly my feeling. I'm like, this is cool. Not my type of game though. Like, plus the amount of math involved, and the other thing that really just it hurt me is the creator, nice guy, but he was talking about the system and why he chose to do it a certain way. And it was, he chose to do he called it a true plus minus, which to how every other game I've been playing, everything, it's opposite. Like the lower the number, the better kind of opposite. So my brain just did not want to do it because it's so ingrained that the higher the number, the better. And in this case, it was the lower the number, the better. And everything was reversed. So, if they had cover, they got pluses versus minuses, stuff like that. So I was like, I don't understand. I'm trying to, you know what? And it got to the point after playing, for a little bit, because it was like a 3-hour game, about an hour in. I'm like, you just tell me what I need to roll on this D20 to hit, please, because I have no idea.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like me when I started and we were playing 2nd edition D&D with Thaco.
Yes.
And I for the love of everything, I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to roll and you tell me if I hit, because I cannot math that way.
Yeah. It was horrible for me. And I get it. I understand what he was going for. I understand, like, I could see what he was saying. I just couldn't process what he was saying. And then it got even more complex later because, like, Chris had this bot that was like across the field. And so he was firing, and the guy's like, yes, you can fire because it does have the range. However, at X range, the bullet drops 1 point per Y inches, blah, 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 blah. Like, so there was like this extra math, and it's like, okay, hold on. You want to run that by me like 7 more times? Because I am so lost. So it had that. So it's like, oh, so your accuracy decreases, which means the AC is going to decrease. And, I'm like, I don't understand. Like, just what do I need to roll to avoid dying? Or what does he need to roll to hit me? That's all I need to know.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, but I mean, I have gotten into recently Warhammer and Kill Team, but that's more for work. And I will say, of those games, I only enjoy the painting, the building and the painting. The actual playing, I'm not into. I get there and I'm like bored after 3 seconds.
Oh my goodness. Now, some role players, not going to name names, but some role players tend to have like certain characters or like styles because it changes from, especially with different genres and stuff. Is there a particular like style of character that you kind of default to, whether it's like a certain class or a certain like way that they are, or do you change it up with every game? Or are you like, I'm going to play something completely different?
I think I try to change it up a little bit, but there's always a little bit of kind of the party mom role. Not in the let's be responsible and not do stupid things, but in the when you do the stupid things, I'm there to put the band-aid on role. Kind of the cleanup role, I guess you could say. So I tend to play you know, healers or people with healing abilities. When I don't have that, and I just realized this kind of actually the other night, I was playing a monk who has no magic, no healing. I'm like, I literally just punch things. Okay, this is boring. Like, it's not doing it for me. So I think I end up enjoying that kind of party mom, like having a role in the party and having a responsibility. But otherwise, I mean, I try to vary my characters. I've played different classes. I've played different races. I have played. I think my favorite, at least in 5th edition so far, is Paladin by far. That's my favorite class I've played. And when if I have to jump into a game with like the kids or something, I'm also I also know that one the best. So that's the one I tend to just pick up and play with the kids because I can, make a paladin 3 seconds. I'm like, okay, I have a paladin. Here's her stats. Here's this, and this. Okay, let's go. And they're like, did you really just make a paladin character? It took you longer to write it than to create it? I'm like, I have played so many paladins by jumping into games for you guys. It's fine. I know how to do this. Plus, you don't have a healer or a tank. Paladins can do both. So they're like, fair. Okay, let's go.
Now, when you talk about the kids, what are you talking about?
I am talking about the kids I work with. So I work for a local nonprofit organization called Hero Spark, and we do after school and summer programming for youth. So ages approximately 11. I mean, we do have some younger kids, but approximately 11 to 17. And we teach them D&D and other games. We do homework help, and then we try to kind of build social emotional skills through gaming. So, using D&D and Warhammer, we teach them communication, leadership, strategy, critical thinking, creative writing, art skills, through painting minis, stuff like that, through gaming. So it's these are the kids I work with. My program where I'm at is actually it's off of south it's the South Trail Branch Road, and we have a lot of at-risk youth that come into my program. So did I just say at-youth?
I think you might have. I don't think the youth part, but the risk part. I think
they kind of smushed together, didn't they?
They smushed it, yeah.
Okay, at-risk youth. So I work with a lot of them, and it's great to see them kind of getting invested and realizing that it's okay to be nerdy. It's okay to like fantasy and sci-fi and stuff, because I've seen kids come in who are, you can tell that they're interested. They've got that really like, ooh, what is this going on? Look, but they also have the insane fear of being judged by their peers because they're teenagers and it's a crappy time in their lives. And they're terrified of being called the nerd or something. So when they come in, they see there's 6 other kids sitting around the table, shouting about, smushing a goblin, and throwing dice around, they're like, oh, maybe this is cool. Like maybe it is acceptable. So it's really cool to see that and maybe hopefully develop some extra skills. I'm hoping by the end of this year, my goal for this school year is to have one, just one of my students take up the GM mantle.
That would be awesome.
That I would be the happiest ever. The happiest. So that's my goal for the end of the year, is to get one of them to kind of step up and take that first step into being a DM. Even if it's a co-DM with me, I'm totally fine with that. I've co-DM'd with kids before. And it's actually a really great way to introduce them for anybody who's looking to introduce kids to the game and to running the game, is to co-DM with them, where you kind of let them run the story and you just help with the mechanics. Because that's where they seem to struggle the most, is like their players like, oh, I want to, leap up onto the roof and then like swing down like Batman and crash through the window. And you see the GM, the student GM, their face goes like blank and they're like, I have no idea how. They have that, I don't want to say no, but I don't know how to do this. So I'll just kind of lean over, I'll scribble on like a sticky note that's like 2 dex checks, 1 acrobatic check or something, and just slide it across the table. And they're like, oh, so, okay, I'm going to let you do this, but I'm going to need, and they, they just roll with it. So it's really, really fun.
That's awesome. I know that it's been something that's really in recent, I guess the past year or so, just the explosion of, especially on Twitter, where you see so many people running it as like an after school program for like a club in middle school or high school. And that it's just becoming, there's so many out there and it's just so beneficial. Like I would have loved to have had that club when I was that age. That would have been something that I would have loved to have been a part of.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do here, is just having that space for them to come and play and, explore. And it does, D&D teaches a lot of skills that you don't know you're learning. You don't realize that you're learning problem solving skills and, creative thinking, leadership, communication. Like none of those are really super hard skills. They're more of the soft skills that are hard to teach. So this is a way to teach them, and they have fun doing it. And then, of course, there's the math and the reading and the writing, but those are a little bit more tangible.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think I read an article somewhere, it was either yesterday or the day before, that there were like a set of kids that had done really well on like some standardized test, and they're trying to figure out like what was the connection, and it was their D&D after school program that helped them with the STEM, like science, technology, engineering, math. Like D&D kind of like gave them that foundation for them to succeed.
Yeah, it's really beneficial. I've seen articles about, inmates in prison taking up D&D because, it's a way for them to connect with each other as well as to kind of escape their reality. And then it also helps build other fundamental skills that they can then take when they are released into the real world that they're better for. So it benefits a lot of different people. Kids with autism, it gives them a focus and a goal. Regular kids who are maybe introverted and shy get to kind of break out and be a character that's not introverted and shy. It's a fantastic tool for all sorts of things. I'm a big supporter of using D&D. There should be a class in school for D&D. No.
Oh my goodness. One day. Cross fingers.
Yes.
As we said as I said at the beginning of the podcast, you are not just a podcaster. You have 2 podcasts that you are a part of.
Yep.
Along with a number of other projects that you do. So let's talk first about, I guess we'll go with DnD Raw, which is it's a combination 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons actual play plus like a rules show.
Yeah, so it actually started out as a in the Raw, or Rules as Written, came from us. We would sit around playing our face-to-face game, 5-6 hours, wrap up the game, and then spend another hour or so discussing various rules that maybe came up during the game. Or, I really loved when this had come out and I wish I'd thought to use this spell. It would have, circumvented this instance or this navigation, So we wound up taking that idea of how we always sit around and talk about it and taking it on to a podcast. So our first chunk of episodes are actually us sitting around discussing rules as written, which is, this is the way it's written. This is how we used it. This is how we've homebrewed it. And then here are ways that we've seen to break it. Here are ways that it is broken. Here's ways that, take this idea and run with it, kind of thing. I think one of the first ones is falling. If you read in the Dungeon's Handbook, or sorry, the Player's Handbook, or maybe it's the Dungeon Master's Guide, one of those books, it talks about falling damage, and you take 1d6 per 10 feet that you fall, up to 120 feet. So we got into this discussion, well, what if you're falling from 12,000 feet? Because we had an instance where we were up in a flying castle, thousands and thousands of feet above the ground. And, our DM had prepared for this. Bethany had prepared. But basically, one of our people, their mount got knocked unconscious and they were unconscious. And our caster was out of range to cast Featherfall. So, and it wouldn't have worked anyways, because that only protects you for so long. So he plummeted to the ground. So it was like, okay, well, per the rules as written, he only had to take, so many dice of damage, which was more than enough to kill him. But at the same time, it was enough to outright kill him.
Oh, okay.
It was enough. So he technically was dead. I'm trying to think if he was dead or if he was just unconscious dead. I think he was dead, but the cleric dive bombed down to get to him in time to heal him or revivify. So it was one of those, you have, 6 seconds for revivify. He got there in 5. One round later, or you have a minute and he got there in 59 seconds to revivify. So he got there just under time based on, our calculations of falling. So we discussed, if you're falling from that height, what about terminal velocity, and what about, how many dice realistically should it be? So, I think that's one of the heaviest, one of the number heaviest episodes we've done, because there's a lot of calculations. Because we're like, okay, if you're falling at terminal velocity, you weigh this much, blah 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 blah. Let's get the physics aspect here. You're hitting the ground at X miles per hour. Okay, that would equate to roughly X dice. I think we figured it out. It'd be some ridiculous number like 500 D6 or something ridiculous. It's an instant kill because you've plummeted to the ground. So, and we always joke that his character, one of the main reasons he didn't explode on impact, his body didn't just fly apart and become, a splatter, is because he was also wearing magical armor.
Okay.
And there's this coating that people use on their truck beds. I don't know if you've seen or heard it, but it's essentially it's like bulletproof, impact proof. It's this black coating, that they layer the inside of their truck so that when they're throwing cinder blocks or whatever in it, it doesn't dent their truck. It just bounces off. So I found a video of a couple of guys who had coated a watermelon in this substance, and then they chucked the watermelon off of a radio tower. So a couple 100 feet up, and the watermelon bounced, and then it bounced again, and then it bounced a couple more times, and then it, rolled to a stop, and they go down, they pick it up, and you can hear when they pick it up that as they kind of move the watermelon around, it just sloshes on the inside because everything was pulverized from the impacts. And we're like,
right.
That's what magical armor does for characters. So that's what we equated. Like, that's what his body looked like before the cleric got there. And, revivify, please come back to life. You're not dead, But the thought of it is like, oh, that's horrifying. Yeah. I don't know if I'd want to be brought back from that.
Yeah, that's like just things floating around in armor. That's gross.
Yep. So yeah, so we go over stuff like that, and then we talk about, well, on the way down, if he'd cast Featherfall, would have it lasted long enough? No, it wouldn't have, because it only lasts for so many rounds, and as you're falling, yes, it may take, we'll say 10 seconds or a minute or whatever to get to the ground, but once you cast Featherfall, it slows your descent, which then lengthens the time. Which means then it would have it would have run out before you got down. So we were like doing when would you have to cast it in order to be able to make it to the ground safely? Or, if you cast it at X point, you would slow fall to Y point and then drop the rest of the way, which means you would take Z damage versus the full impact. So there was a lot of back and forth. But that's what those discussions are like.
And those are always good discussions to have. It's always good to like get clarification on things where it's just, well, what would the reaction be like on certain things? Especially, I know when I was playing 4th edition, I used to run like a play-by-post PvP game where they would have a team of PCs going on off against another team of PCs. So one person's running like 4 player characters.
Yep.
And there became an issue between someone's armor versus someone's weapon and how it would work out. And so like we had pages and pages of, well, this is the armor says this, but the weapon says this. How would they react? What would the reaction be? Would the armor actually deflect the weapon? Would the weapon be able to get through that magical deflection before like the deflection takes effect? It's definitely something where things don't come up often, but when they do, it's like, let me see if there's answers out there.
Yep, sounds about right.
And so first discussing rules as written, and then progressed into both rules as written and actual play.
Yeah, so prior to starting that rules as written, I was a part of another podcast, and there was a little bit of a falling out, and that was an actual play one. So that's why I had the equipment, and so that's kind of what got us talking about the podcasting, I guess, front to begin with. And then kind of after we did some things with one of the guys that originally started rules as written with us kind of didn't want to do it anymore. So he, backed out of the thing. Was, you guys take it over, keep running with it. It's all yours now. Have fun. So we did some more rules episodes, and we're like, well, what else can we do with this? And we'd kind of spitballed around playing doing some actual play. So we just started doing it. And then kind of went from there to having the first, we had Orenthal is the first season, so to speak, of actual play. And it's a self-contained story. We're all fifth level, and it takes place over several episodes, but it's actually only, I think, 2 or 3 days in game. And we recorded over the course of, months and did everything. And then that wrapped up. We did some in-between stuff, and now we're actually in our second season, which varies from the first one in that we now have 2 groups playing. So I'm in Rumble Squad, which is one of the groups, and the other group is Serviceable Plots.
Okay.
And we basically have 2 groups. We're very different play styles, very different storylines, same universe, same timeline, all that, different sides of the map, basically, though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's Tony's world, Tony's campaign that he's running, and it's something he's been working on for years, I know. Kind of writing everything in the background because it's something he always wanted to do since he kind of started playing D&D. And so now he's getting to play it and run it and, see where the story goes, kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And you DnD Raw was part of the, let's see if I get it right. Was it the podcast of it wasn't
Foes.
Podcast of Annihilation, it was
Foes. The one
Foes.
before
Okay.
that. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Podcast of Foes.
Yeah. That was Bethany's doing. She saw that they were looking for some podcasts to do it. She jumped on it and then asked us, "Hey, do you want to do it?" After she got yeah, we'd love to have you. So it came really fast. I think we had a 2-week turnaround from when we got the okay, here's the book, to please have it turned in by this date. So we had to pull together really quick characters and all that stuff. We were level 8. It was a one shot. I actually just used, I had created for another campaign I was playing in. A friend was running called Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. He's running those 2 books for us. And he kind of expedited things because he found out it was very grindy in the middle. So we went levels 1 through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think jump to 8, jump to 10, jump to 20. So, we did some stuff and then we would be, next session, you guys are going to be level 8. Next session, you guys are going to be level 10. All right. Next session, you'll be level 20 because this is what's going to happen in the middle and it's going to be really boring. So we're just going to say, you guys have done all this. You guys are, we're going to skip that because it's going to be boring. And we just want to kill the big dragon. So we kind of expedited. So we actually had level 20 characters. And for that, I was playing a level 20 gnome warlock. And she was actually level 17 warlock, level 3 fighter. And a lot of fun to play. Really weird, really quirky, very, she was a warlock of the Undying Light. So she was from the Unearthed Arcana. And her patron is basically like the happy, feel-good feelings that make up the universe. If you can think of the most happiest good warlock, that was her. Afraid of the dark, kind of chipper little gal. So I took her, down leveled her back to level 8 and just used her in the one shot. And it was a lot of fun. She was quirky. She's quirky. She's fun. Likes to party, but back her into a corner and she turns into a T-Rex and bites your head off. So it was a lot of fun. Tony ran that after he got the books and stuff, and we basically got to be put up on the not Dragon Talk, on the D&D, the Wizards feed, as well as on our own. So it was cool. It was a lot of fun. We got to hear all the other people and how they, which monsters they used, how they highlighted things from the book, whatnot. It was really cool.
That's awesome. And it's awesome to be like part of that bigger community of, especially, Wizards of the Coast. It's like, what?
Yeah, we may have all freaked out a little bit because we were simultaneously ridiculously excited and terrified. Like, don't screw this up, terrified. So we wanted everything to be perfect. But at the same time, we only had a 2-week turnaround to plan, schedule, record, edit, publish. So it was a little bit of a time crunch, but it worked out. It was a great time. We had so much fun. Just loved it.
And on the flip side, from D&D Raw, you do epic endings.
I do. That is my side project that I kind of started after Rules is Written was kind of on its own 2 feet. This was before we had really officially started doing the actual play for Rules is Written. I still kind of had the idea that I wanted to do an actual play, but I wanted to DM it. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. If I wanted to do a custom story that I've been kind of toying with off and on for a couple years, or if I wanted to just do something else. So I kind of looked around at what was out there and I was like, oh, if I do a custom story, like the podcast field is flooded with that, and I don't know if my quality would be good enough to really, like, I didn't think that my quality was bad, but I'm like, it's not top tier. It's not like, it's solidly okay. So I was like,
that's your tagline right there. Solidly okay.
solidly okay. So I was like, I don't know if I'd be like good enough to like grab enough attention. And I don't want to put, because I know it's a lot of work, I don't want to put a lot of effort into something that's not going to be noticed, at least not in like more than a little bit. I want to be slightly noticed. I don't expect to be, big like dice camera action or anything like that. But I don't want to have like, one listener and it's Bethany,
Right.
I'd be really
exactly.
disappointed. So I was like, okay, well, I got to come up with something cool. And so I was like kind of brainstorming ideas. And then I was like, you know what? Nobody really gets to play level 20 characters, but I also have no desire to run a level 20 campaign. It's like, so how can I get people to play a level 20 character? What would be the premise? So I came up with the idea that I would have level 20 players. I would have 4 of them. They play individually though. So they are a team of 1, a solo player running through modules that I've found on the DM's Guild. And they're starting at level 1. They start this, the first mission I run is called the Justice Fist. It's a level 1 adventure written for 4 to 5 characters. They are 1 level 20 character trudging into this little dungeon area, and they have to figure it out. So that's the premise, is it's kind of a gauntlet of increasingly difficult adventures that I've selected, read through, prepped everything, and then we'll see where they die, because I can almost guarantee they're all going to die at some point. it's just where. I fully anticipate that I think all of them will make it to level 10. They're currently in levels 2 and 3, but I think they'll all make it to level 10. And then after that, I think is when things get exponentially harder. I know for sure, I think it's level 12 or 13. That's probably the cutoff for most of them, if they make it to that one. Without spoilers, of course. But yeah, it's pretty fun. What I thought would be, I expected them to get through the level 1 in about 2 hours. It took one guy like 8 hours. It took another one 4 hours. It took Jane, I think, 4 or 5 hours. So I've had a lot more content than I bargained for, which is a good and a bad thing. It's good because I have a lot of content. It's bad because I thought at this point I would be much further along in their progression through all the adventures. And for example, Chris hasn't even started level 2 yet. The other people finished it, but Chris hasn't even started it yet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's a larger time investment than I think I realized when I got started.
Yeah,
yes.
I have yes. I'm trying to make like words come out, and it's like my mind is just like, yeah, I understand.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And when you're kind of doing everything, so I'm doing the social media, I'm doing the cross promotion, I do the editing, the recording, the scheduling. Yeah, it's
yes.
yes, all the yes. I don't hate any of it. I really, really do enjoy it. I just wish I had way more time in the day.
I'm nodding along here. Yes. No one can see me, but I'm nodding along. I can
hear the nod through the computer.
Yes. Now, what's your? I just want to ask real quick. What is your favorite part of doing the podcasts? Either DnD Raw, Epic Endings. Like, what do you love about it?
I really like the community all around. For both shows, I've met some awesome people. Through our meetups, I get to meet people. When we went to Gen Con through DnD Raw, we met up with a bunch of other podcasters and stuff. And I think it's a great way to kind of outreach and meet people with similar interests that, a lot of gamers are a little bit more reserved and they have a hard time reaching out, but it's like through Twitter and stuff, you're a little bit more confident and it's a lot easier to find somebody with that same interest instead of just walking into, a Barnes and Noble and seeing somebody who's looking at the Game of Thrones books and walking over and going, "Oh, so you're a fan?" And they go, "Oh no, I'm just buying this for a friend." Or, something like that. Whereas through Twitter, it's like people clearly say like, "I like this thing." And it's just awesome to connect with so many people who have so many skills and talents and interests that's like, "Hey, I see you're into D&D. You are also into Doctor Who. You are also into The Office. Let's be friends." Um and you can't do that through a lot of other means. People might find you on your podcast and they're like, "Oh, hey, look, this person's a fan of this. Let me message them on Twitter." And it just kind of spirals from there because I've had like 3 or 4 people who message me about that. And now we chat regularly.
Yep, that is the greatest thing I think since starting the podcast is getting on Twitter and just finding so many wonderful people on there, so many great communities, especially like the tabletop role playing community is just, for the most part, I'd say 90% incredible.
Yes. There's always that little bit that you're like, I don't associate that with those guys, but the rest of them are really awesome.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully people will follow you. And for those who have listened to this episode and they'd like to check out you or DnD Raw or Epic Endings, what are the best places for people to find them and you at?
So if you're looking for the shows, you can find both shows on pretty much all the major podcast apps and networks, or not networks, but apps and services. So like iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify, things like that. Rules as Written, you can find under capital D, lowercase n, capital D, and then all caps Raw. So DnD Raw. And then Epic Endings comes up as Epic Endings on both, all services. As far as like Twitter, you can find at Rules as Written for that one and at Epic Endings Pod. And I'm pretty active on both of those. So if you message DnD Raw, there's a 90% chance Bethany will respond on there. But if you say, "Hey, I want a question for Rachel" or something, she'll pass it on, or I get it on my phone. She just usually somehow responds faster than me. So yeah, she's like on it all the time. And then we've got emails and stuff, which you can find through the show notes and all that. I also have like my blog, thefemalepally.wordpress.com, which has all my show notes as well as blog shout outs to various shows, which I need to add one for you, David.
What?
Yeah, I gotta add one for you. I also need a promo from you, but we'll get back to that. So I've got show notes. I've got Tales from the Kids Table, which is I play with kids. So I talk about some of the ridiculous shenanigans that they have pulled at the table. Everything from me describing a very lovely shopkeep where they immediately assumed she was a witch, to let's have a dance off with the leader of the kobolds, because why not? So it's just shenanigans. I never know what they're going to say next. So these are some of the stories that have kind of cropped up from me running these games for them because they have no filter and it's hilarious. I will say that if you read them, I do not use any of the kids' real names. I think I call them like John and Bob. So, that's not their real names, but it's, they're kids, so I have to protect them. But it is, they're fun. They're fun. So that's my Tales from the Kids Table. And then I've got show notes about the episodes. You can find where to find the modules that I'm running, or if you're curious about what I think of the modules, there's a write-up on each of those as I'm releasing them that says, these were the challenges, or this is what you got, this is what I liked, this is what I didn't particularly care for, this is what I thought was hilarious, how the players reacted. So
Very cool.
Yep.
And I'll have all the links to the podcasts and blog and Twitters and Facebooks and Twitch, because you do streaming as
Yes.
well.
I do streaming. I'm currently trying to get back in the regular schedule of streaming. The last few months have been all over the place, so I've only been streaming on my team channel. I'm part of an all-female gamers group called Beauty Gamers, and I stream on I'm part of their stream team. So I currently, that's my only regularly scheduled day, is Tuesday mornings on their channel, but the rest of the time on my channel is whenever I have the time and the motivation and feel like showing my beautiful face.
Awesome. Well, I will have links to everything that Rachael has talked about in our show notes, on our Facebook page, on the website, so you can easily find Rachael's projects and the podcasts and the streams, so that way you can interact with Rachael. And Rachael, I just want to say thank you again so much for coming on and doing this with me today. And I'm really happy that we were able to get to talk about all this fun stuff.
Yeah, thank you, David. It was great. And, hopefully I can have you on my show in some capacity. I don't know what yet, because I haven't gotten that far. But in some capacity, I do hope to have other people on the show besides just the players. That's a work in progress, though. So hopefully.
Isn't it always something where you're like, I'd love to do this, and then you're like, even with one of my podcasts, it's like, I'd love to do this part of the podcast, and 2 years later I'm like, yeah, I still haven't done that part. And I don't know if I'm going to get to it.
Yeah, it's my plate is full at the moment, so when I finish one or two things, perhaps I can look to the next project.
Exactly. But thank you again so much. It was an absolute pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it was great being on. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.